Hey, thanks for coming back and checking out this video. So today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a shell removal and lubrication on a Lionel 2018 2018. Now, this particular boiler is shared with a lot of other trains in the Lionel lines. It's a pretty common shell, but today we're going to be dealing with the 2018. This is one that I picked up at a train show quite a few years ago, and she was a really good runner straight off the bat. But having said that, we've put a lot of hours on this particular one, so I just thought I'd show everybody just a quick little shell removal and general cleaning on it. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the top screw here, like so. Get that out. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to get my blue magnetic screw tray. We'll drop that right in there. Now we're going to flip the locomotive over. Now you can take the running gear arms off of here to help the whole thing come out. Those pliers here. And get this nut off. That just saves taking apart the whole set here, which maybe we'll end up doing later. We'll determine that when we get to that point. They come off fairly easily, unless they've been jammed on there. Take that out now. Go, spacer, we'll put that all in the plate right there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this long body pin here. And if you look up inside the locomotive, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but one of the ends is knurled and the other one is smooth. So I tend to push it so the knurled end comes out first, because it doesn't always slide out the other side easily. So what I use is this is a screwdriver that from an eyeglass repair kit, and it's actually the same size as the shaft that's in there. So it makes it easy to just give it a push and push the whole thing through. And then you can grab it on the other end and pull it out. So that is that there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take these trucks off here. And it's also a good idea too, if you're not too sure or you think you might have problems about how to put this back together, to take a picture of all of this first to make sure you've got some kind of a reference. But again, I guess you got this video. So we got all that off. Next is two slot screwdrivers in here, and they hold down this whole front piece here. So there we go. We can just pull this out now, unhook it from the back, and there's our motor out. Okay, just put the truck off to the side, the steam plunger. So this is it here. This is the motor of it. This here is a pellet type smoke unit. It still works absolutely fine. Produces a great amount of smoke. I'm very happy with it. And while we got this out, I will also point out that if you do have one of these pellet types, you can absolutely put the liquid smoke in there. This is what I use for all of my Lionel trains, directly into the pellet units, or obviously into the liquid units too. It works great. It will not harm this at all. You don't have to worry about it. Under here is, these are our brushes, and under here is the armature that the brushes run against. We're going to take off this plate, have a look at the armature, make sure it's free and clear, and also doesn't have any carbon buildup on it. I go through this every time I get a new post-war locomotive. I do the shell removal, I take all of this stuff off, give it all a clean before I even try to put it on the tracks. So we get this plate out of the way and we expose the armature and wipe away any excess oil or any grease or anything that's on there. And then next what I do is I get a green 3M Scotch pad, which comes in a larger pad like this. I get these from the dollar store. It's cheap. I think it's like $1.50 for, I don't know, a set of 6 or something. Just cut them into smaller pieces. Hold the armature and then just give it a little scrub. This is abrasive enough just to lift off the carbon, but not so abrasive to actually really scratch up or wear down any material on the armature's surface. And as long as you see that bright copper color, you're good. You don't have to go too far on it. Now, the next thing is these little slots here. They usually get packed full of carbon as well, so we'll want to clear those out. And you can use like a toothpick, a piece of wiring. What I use is this flossing stick because it's nice and thin, gets right in there. It's a soft plastic material, so it's not going to damage anything. And just scrape those out. Okay, knock any of the loose carbon out. So that's the armature done and ready. Then we have a look at the plate itself. This has got a lot of oil on it, so I want to get that off. So we'll get my cloth here and just give it a wipe just to get that excess out of there. Don't want it. There we go. Now the brass brush holders themselves, these here, what we're going to do is I can just get a little Q-tip. We can stick it in there and give it a twist around to clear out again, because carbon will end up sitting up in there also. If this is really, really packed, what I end up doing is I get a little bit of contact cleaner and I just give it a quick shot at the end of the Q-tip, like that. Not a lot. And you can just work that around in the brush holder. You can see it's gotten some dirt out of it, but these ones weren't too bad because I did do a cleanup on this not too long ago. Just get any of that excess fluff out of there. Okay, and that'll be good to go. Then we can take a look at the brushes themselves. This has got quite a bit of oil buildup on it. Okay, so I'm going to set those back in, put this plate back on. There's two ways you can do this. You can put the plate on as it is now, screw that back down, and then these springs here, if you can see them there, you can remove them out and then drop the brushes in through here and then put those springs back in. I find that to be a pain in the butt, so I just leave them as it is. And I hold the motor on its side, like so. Put the brushes in this way. And you want to remember this notch end of the brush goes in first because that's where the spring sits to hold it in. With the brush plate and the whole motor on its side, just line it up to the shaft. We'll push that back on. We can flip it over and line it up. And you'll feel it click into place. Because there's a little protrusion here, and in the body of the train there's like a little indent, or a dimple, and you'll feel it kind of settle into position. And then you can put your screws back in. Once the screw seats, just give it a little extra turn. Get it to seat, little extra turn, and that'll do it. I never want to over tighten this stuff. Because first of all, you don't have to. Second of all, because this material can get so old, and from all of the heat and cooling over 60 to 70 years, it can make it brittle and it can possibly crack. So if you really want to line up these little notches with the springs in the brush, you can get your flathead screwdriver and you can just twist the brush and pop the screw back in. Twist the brush so that it's straight again. And there, that's finished. We're getting over to the other side. We're going to take the bearing plate off and just have a look in there. And maybe give that some lube as well. And I find that 2018 can be pretty finicky with lube. If you don't get enough on it, it can howl and make a grinding sound. But usually it's just a matter of putting a little bit more on. So this doesn't look too bad. I'll just wipe off what's here and I'll apply some fresh stuff just so you can see. What I use is just Vaseline as the grease for these. It seems to work fine. I will also use some bearing grease also. That one is a little quicker. You can just get the tube, slide it over the shaft itself and give it a bit of a squeeze. And there, it gets it right on. You don't need to coat these things heavily. Like that'll be perfectly fine. I'm just going to wipe the old one off of off the bearing plate here. Get that leather grease out of the way. And then we can just drop this bearing plate back on. And once again, there's 2 pins that are in the chassis, and there's 2 notches on either side of the bearing plate. Slide that over the shaft and line up those notches. And there you go. And that's done. We can drop our screws back in, tighten her up. And that's good. So that's done. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe off the excess oil that's gotten on top of the plate, because that could end up just causing a big mess. So that's that. Now you can give the wheels a spin and you can get that lube, the grease that you've put on these wheels, spread around a little more. If you feel you didn't put enough on, or maybe it does need a little bit more, you can turn them around and get the other sides that you weren't able to reach before. There we go. We've got the bearing plate back on and we've got it lubed up. One thing that we can take a look at is we'll dive into this E-unit here. Now we don't have to do a big in-depth thing, but we can remove it out and kind of give it a visual inspection. So the way they come out is there's usually just one screw on one side holding it in. So we'll take that out and then gently just kind of slide it up and out it comes. And that's it there. So now we can kind of give it a visual inspection here. Now this one is fairly dirty and it does have a melted tooth on it here, but I do know that there is still enough for the plunger, which comes down and grabs this tooth and flip it. There's enough there for it to still grab, so that functions fine. I'm going to clean off this cylinder because you get a good contact in there and it just makes the whole thing work a heck of a lot better. I'm going to get my green cloth again, and I'm just going to hold the E-unit, just give it a bit of a buff here. And if you can get your finger in there, just kind of hold it steady. And just like on the armature plate, you don't need to apply a whole lot of pressure to get that thing clean. And then you can just flip it around. You can either lift this up and just spin the barrel to the next spot to clean. Same thing, just give it a bit of a wipe, just enough to get all of that old oil, dirt, and grease off. So now just move on to the other side of it. Okay, so now these copper areas that are on this barrel, there are fingers. And if you can kind of see them right in here where these connections are going into, and they actually make contact with that. The fingers themselves can get dirty too, but in order to clean them, you got to take the thing apart, which I'm not going to do today, but I am going to wipe off some of this excess spray oil here. And I can see that there is some dirt on some of these here that I can get to from the top with a Q-tip. So again, just kind of put that in there. Just mop up whatever you can reach. You want to be careful with those fingers, especially because they are very delicate. They will easily break, and when they do, you will have to take this apart and replace the whole piece, whatever that those fingers are on. It's like a fiberboard thing, and all the wires are soldered into them. It's a real fun treat not to get that done. So that's the E-unit. Just a little quick cleaning on it here. So what we're going to do is we're going to bend it back around and slide it back into place like so. And this is too where you can come into problems with original wiring, because these are all the original wires, and flexing them too much, they can break in there, and the only way you'll know that that happens is you'll put this on the track and it won't really do anything. So that's cleaned. We're going to put the screw back in like so. So what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to clean this little contact here just with my little green pad. Just brush it off lightly. The other side looks good. Just put that down there. So that's the E-units taken care of. We've got our bearing plate oiled. We've got our armature cleaned and the brushes cleaned. Now this is ready to go back into the shell. So we just put it back in the reverse order that we took it out. You want to make sure about the lever here on the E-unit that it's actually going to line up with the slot. You don't want to just jam it in there and bend that up. First thing too we want to make sure of is we get our little smoke unit washer put back in there and make sure all our wiring is going to be clear. You do it a few times, you start to get the hang of it, and it becomes much easier to do. You start to figure out the best methods for you to do it. And sometimes if you do have to take it out and reposition some stuff, that's fine, as long, like all of these E-unit wires here, we want them, this here is where the pin goes through, so we want them free of that little tab. So it might take dropping it in and taking it out a couple times to make sure you've got everything lined up and no obstructions, no wires are getting pinched. That's perfectly fine and normal for me anyways. So there we go. We're just going to set that in. Make sure our washer is still lining up. It's getting blocked a little bit there. There we go. The unit lever is clear. Headlamp wire. Get that in there. In and around, up and down, and in you go. Okay, so that's all that settled in. We can put our top bolt in to hold the motor in place, like so. Then we can put our body pin in. Again, smooth side in first, keep the knurled edge out. What I tend to do with these, because they don't always line up perfectly, is get the pin in, kind of jiggle the body around a little bit. You might have to push the pin a little bit to line it up with the hole, as you can see there. Get it in good. And I take the soft end of the screwdriver, just tap it through, and away you go. So that's in, looking good. Now we just put the whole steam chest assembly back together. And again, we want that headlamp wire clear of the smoke unit because we don't want it to hang anything up. Next, we'll get our little plunger here. We'll drop that in, and you can see there's 2 notches in the casting. That's where the arm of the smoke plunger rests. So we'll just get that in there, like so. That's how it sits. You want this end. This is the lever end that the piston drives on and pumps the air up and down through the smoke unit. You want that sitting on top of this rail. So that's all good. Now we can slide the steam chest over, and again, we've got our wire from our headlamp clear. It's not obstructing the piston. We're just going to slide this thing in, and it's got there's 2 slots, flat slots here. That's where these things slide into. Just kind of line that up, drop them on, and we'll get the 2 big screws for this, and we'll tighten this one down. Like that. I just seated the screw and seat it and give it that little extra twist, and that'll be good enough. Now we can put our front truck back on, and it just hooks onto this tab, and then this end of it we want to swing around the silver piece so it hooks on. Push this down. Now the spring that's in the bulb is pushing this assembly up a little bit because I think the spring is a replacement and it's a bit big, but it's okay. We'll just give it a little extra push down there, and the screws will hold it in place. All right, we're almost done here. So now we just put the arms back on. And the way I like to remember it is the nut side faces out. And to slide, you can just slide these on from the back. You don't have to try to put them on first. You just get this nut out of the way, and then these will just slide into place through the back, like so. And we get our spacer. Drop that on. Get the screw and carefully thread it. There's no real alignment for this arm. It just drops straight on. Get your little nut driver or pliers or whatever and just give it an extra little tighten. Same thing on this side. Nut side faces out. Slide it through the back and into the hole in the cylinder. Spacer. And the last thing I want to do is I want to wipe the wheels off just in case any oil got on them. Just wipe them dry. All right, so that's that. That's the 2018 shell removal, lube, cleaned up, E-unit checked over some wiring, reassembled, and now we can throw this back on the track and watch her run. I'll see you on the tracks. I've got my original KW transformer set up here, and I have I believe it's a 243W tender. I'm not a numbers matching kind of guy. I know certain tenders went with certain locomotives. I actually prefer the shorter tenders. I think 6466 or something. Anyways, for the sake of this video, I put on the 243W. So let's fire it up. All right, so one more thing before we get started. As I showed you guys earlier, that has a pellet type smoke unit. So now I'm going to put a few drops of the smoke fluid into the pellet type to show you that it will work just fine. So that's the shell removal and lubing and just kind of general cleaning and maintenance of my Lionel 2018. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it useful. Please subscribe, hit the notification button, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye now.